816 KFire 550 99.7, your free iHeart app, so you can listen all the way throughout South Dakota in case 550 is getting kind of weird on your radio. Crystal clear on iHeart. Good morning, Guns in the 701. Clay and Mike, how are you guys?
Doing good. How are you doing this morning, Todd?
Hey, doing fantastic. My heart was warmed earlier this week. Kid in Indiana, you may have seen this story. He had a big American flag in the back of his pickup. High school kid, right? And the school said, nope, can't have it. Cannot have it. So a graphics company offered to wrap his pickup in a huge, like, American flag looking thing. And it looks spectacular. And it's not like they can tell him he can't have the wrap on his vehicle. It's part of his vehicle.
If I remember right, that's the same story that a bunch of kids got together after they basically tried to expel this young man because he stood his ground. And everybody had a flag in their pickup. So I'm glad to hear that the company stepped up, even took it a step further.
Yeah, I mean, that is awesome. You know, and like if they've got incentive, because now as they show the pickup, their company name's, on a backdrop there. So, I mean, they're getting, all the free plugs in the world. You see it. So. Right. But, I mean, what a cool move.
Heck yeah.
That is awesome. Take that, school.
I bet that boy is a Second Amendment supporter, too.
Amen, brother. It's the other reason I brought it up, is I bet he is. I don't know for a fact, but you got to believe. I just remember having to pledge allegiance to the flag when I went to school in public schools in Minneapolis. And what do we now, bury the flag and don't want it around, or what the heck?
No. It's insanity. It's the same people that try to infringe on our Constitution every single day.
Yeah, no kidding. Indoctrinate, not teach, and it's just crazy. Yeah. But so the Wyoming legislature moves to radically reduce state gun-free zones. First of all, I don't know. Have we not figured out gun-free zones are just a little too idyllic to be practical?
Well, Democrats don't seem to think so. At least in the fight in Wyoming. I love it. These two guys, I think it's Bouchard is how you pronounce his name, and Beitman, kind of an interesting name, Senator Beitman, basically kind of saying, bite me. To
Beitman.
I love it.
Beitman.
And they actually passed two bills. And it was a Senate bill, 109, and then the House bill, which is 125. And 125 is the one that strips the gun-free zones away. It includes everything. It will be a bill that prohibits any regulation by entities other than the legislature of the state of Wyoming. So the state of Wyoming is saying, we are a sovereign state, as it's supposed to be in our Constitution. The state functions over the feds. That's how it was designed. They're basically declaring that here. And it's going to basically prohibit any kind of jurisdiction by any other entity other than Wyoming, the sale, transfer, purchase, delivery, taxation, manufacture, ownership, transportation, storage, use, carrying or possessing of firearms, weapons, accessories, components, or ammunition, except as specifically provided by this chapter. Well, what that will do is it will get rid of the gun-free zone, the federal gun-free zones that were set up under the Clinton administration and then, of course, carried through. I mean, that is a bold statement telling the feds, get out of our state, quit infringing on our rights, quit infringing on our jurisdiction. I love it. I would love to see North Dakota's legislature and the so-called Republicans grow a pair and do the same right here next session, but I have very little hope that that'll happen. I think it's a great piece of legislation.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Sorry.
It's your show, Mitchell.
If you want to jump in, go for it.
I just jump in any old place. Yeah. It's out of the same playbook as Chapter 2. In fact, if you look, it's the same playbook about if you outlaw guns, only outlaws will have guns.
Pretty much. We've seen it happen, haven't we?
You're not going to get rid of them, and if you try to have a zone that's gun free, sooner or later, you're just asking for trouble if it's a public place.
Well, absolutely.
Soft target.
Yeah, it gives a soft target, and people know this, and it's worked real well, hasn't it? Look how many shootings take place in these gun-free zones, including schools. But we've got malls that are gun-free zones, public gatherings, which we touched on last week in North Dakota about the public gathering law right here in North Dakota that essentially turns that into a gun-free zone and makes everybody there defenseless and a soft target. We need to change that right here in the state of North Dakota. And some states are getting it done. And I know I'm going to be pushing for it in the next session. I want that changed here in North Dakota. If I don't get it this year, we'll just keep hammering it away. That's how this works. You got to go through the process. But a gun-free zone creates a soft target and does absolutely nothing to protect anybody at all. It just makes you a soft target. Mike, you want to jump in on this?
Well, I remember our friend Eric on our show said it best. It says, if I'm there, it's not a gun-free zone. So, I mean, because I'm not going to be a target.
Speaking of creating soft targets, unrelated, well, semi-unrelated, but actually your gun-free zone at this point would be outside. Can we stop? I hope we've stopped having fire drills at schools. When's the last time you heard about a school burning down? But let's shove all the kids all at one time out a door and let them be targets. No, we need to stop that. Right?
Yeah. Imagine that. What a ploy that would be for a criminal, because that's what they are, that wants to inflict harm and kill as many people. Get somebody to pull the fire alarm inside the building.
Yep.
And then everybody leaves the building. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Maybe we shouldn't have said that on air. Maybe we just gave someone
Well, no, but we've seen these radicals and nut jobs that do these shootings occasionally do things and set it up so that law enforcement and second responders, or first responders, will show up and, of course, make themselves targets by showing up, basically an ambush. So, I mean, it's one of those things. Talk about people that should be carrying. I talk about first responders aren't allowed to carry. But you know what? Of all the people that are on the front line, they're there before the cops are most of the time.
I don't say it to give criminals an idea. I say it to give school administrators and boards an idea of, let's
what they're doing.
Do the smart thing with our kids. Just guessing out loud here. Guns of the 701 here on K-Fire 825. Anti-gun Democrats seek to undermine law passed to protect veterans' rights. Yeah, let's make sure we take guns out of the veterans' hands because they're not the most likely to be trained.
Crazy thought, right?
One of the things on this is that if you think about it, if they can deem you unworthy to possess a firearm just because you are no longer capable of taking care of your finances, or whatever dings their little thing. There are all kinds of competency things, whether you are in charge of your medical decisions or whether you are in charge of your finances anymore. If you're dinged on any of those, then you also get dinged on the fact that you can't own a firearm. So that's we're going after our veterans. Sorry, somebody upstairs decided to flush the toilet, so all of a sudden I got noise in my background. But
well, you didn't want them to leave it alone, and then you'd be distracted another way. I mean, at least now the distraction's over, right?
That's right.
Needs a new studio.
I do.
So glad we had this discussion. But you know what? I'm just thinking, and maybe I'm just playing off of a movie stereotype or TV stereotype or something, but I'm thinking the average typical veteran, his or her ability with a gun is probably going to be intact after every other sense of being is lost. That is still going to be on the money. So I'm not
Right.
worried about.
Yeah.
Heck, I know plenty of people who are not veterans and who supposedly have full faculties can't take their care of their finances worth a damn. So let's not
Right.
let that
One's
be
not
the
related.
litmus test.
Yeah, don't let
one's
them know
not
that.
related to the
They'll
other.
go after that too.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's like I said, one's not related to the other. There's no way that you having problems managing your finances and seeking help from the VA and with your benefits, and then they deem that you can't, has nothing to do with your ability to actually possess
Exactly.
and own and use a firearm and restrict your Second Amendment. And that's what they're trying to do. Interestingly, the Democrats themselves voted in this new little omnibus bill that's going through to basically put this in. That was put into that because it wanted to strip that regulation out of there because by law already they can't do it. And it had to do with financing it, and they were voted for it, and of course, then they turned around and said, nope. You have this idiot Representative Mike Thompson, a Democrat out of California. He's the chairman of the so-called House Gun Violence Prevention Task Force. He sent a letter to the Secretary of the VA and basically said, hey, we want to do this, we want to strip this, and essentially they're going to inflict a red flag law on everybody in the VA system that comes for help for whatever reason, whether it's finance or anything. I know that's how they'll do it, and say, yep, that's also a way that you can't have your gun rights. That's
Right.
wrong. It's a violation in itself, and it doesn't surprise me. It really doesn't.
You know, speaking of taking care of your finances, you know what would really help us take care of our finances? Stop taking our money.
What's that? Oh, well, yeah.
There you go.
If I had my money, I'd have better care of my finances. Quit taking my money.
Oh, and not just that. Quit making me rent my property from the state and get rid of property tax.
There
I
you
gotta
go.
throw that in there.
There you go. Love it. Guns in the 701. We got more coming up. Will Mike's upstairs toilet be flushed again? Stay tuned. K-Fire coming up on 842, 18 before 9. It's Dakota Mornings and Michael Bell after 9. Meanwhile, guns in the 701. Time to end the federal medical marijuana and gun ban.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so if anybody doesn't know, when you fill out your Form 4473 when you're purchasing a firearm, which also puts you through the NICS background check system, there's a spot on there where you have to answer if you are a user of drugs, controlled substances, I forget whatever else. If you answer yes, as a lot of people should, then of course you're going to be denied a firearm purchase. If you answer no, like Hunter Biden did, well, you break the law, but you don't get in trouble if you're Hunter. So anyway, that's kind of where this is going, is that marijuana is still considered a controlled substance under the United States Code 18, and it basically regulates everything, including marijuana, as far as controlled substances. So essentially, even if you have a medical marijuana card, which a lot of people do in a lot of states, we're just talking about Wyoming, taking and stripping out federal regulation now, which I think is a good idea. This would relate to it. So Second Amendment Foundation, they now have two plaintiffs that have filed a federal lawsuit that are challenging this ban for people who have a medical marijuana card, is essentially what this is coming down to. It's filed in a U.S. District Court in the Western District of Pennsylvania, so this is going to play out in Pennsylvania. The Second Amendment Foundation, they're joined by the Warren County, Pennsylvania District Attorney Robert Green, who has served in the office since 2013 and has right now a medical marijuana ID card, which is interesting that you have an actual district attorney with this card, and they've signed on to basically make this fight. Then you got James Erie, a veteran who has been recommended the medical marijuana card, but has refrained from getting it, kind of piggybacking off our last segment of a veteran who probably needs this or wants it for medical reasons, and he's afraid to get it because he thinks that he will be then denied his Second Amendment rights, and he probably would on twofold. First, because of what's going on in the VA and the push, and then, of course, the federal law. And, of course, we know who the defendants are. Attorney General Merrick Garland, the FBI Director Christopher Wray, and the ATF Director Stephen Dettelbach, who's a complete moron. We just saw some videos of him and his supposed gun expert not be able to take guns apart properly, but he's a gun expert. So that's the guys that are being sued in this. And, I think it's time. Mike, go ahead and jump in.
Well, basically, it comes down to the fact that, you go off to war, now you're afraid of fireworks and you want to take a gummy, and you're not allowed. I mean, you can't medicate. I mean, if we take out everybody who's medicated here in the United States, my goodness, I mean, think about the pharmaceuticals that are pushed at us every single day. I mean, where does that end? I mean, it just is, it's a total misnomer. We're looking at one more way to help people deal with things throughout the day in order to get through, force whatever. And they're just trying to infringe more upon our rights by going the end around.
Oh, absolutely. And when you look at controlled substances, okay, everyone thinks illegal drugs or illicit drugs, which that is covered under this. I know that there have been people that have been denied basically a purchase because they answered yes because they were actually on some sort of a painkiller, be it morphine or something else, which is a controlled substance, illegal to have without a prescription. It kind of falls in the same venue as marijuana now as a medically controlled substance that's used in medical purposes. So I get why this lawsuit's coming. This could have implications far-reaching. They're also basing it on the Heller and Bruin decisions, which probably should historical use. Well, is it a stretch? I don't know. We're going to find out in court because that's what they're going to go ahead and put on there as their defense on this. And I you know what, marijuana has been around probably probably longer than most things. Is it? Do I do it? No. Do I know people that have? Yes. Do I know people that have medical marijuana cards? Yes. And I can tell you this right now, with those cards and with the use that they're doing, I've seen where there's no reason to deny those people their Second Amendment rights because they're seeking medical treatment, and that's what we're talking about here.
Comes to the 701 on K-Fire here, 846. How long before somebody decides that if you've had a DUI, you shouldn't be able to shoot, or at least you'll have to have, they have ignition interlocks for cars, right, where you're going to breathe into it or it's not going to start. How long before they have that for your gun?
I don't want to breathe into my gun to make it fire.
Yeah, can you imagine that? I mean, the technology probably isn't there yet, but can you imagine that? It does exist on cars. Do you remember the smart gun thing here a few years ago, Todd, where they wanted you to be able to implement something where if you didn't have your fingerprint keyed up to your hand grip, which it just was a stupid idea, then cause it couldn't be fired, then you couldn't buy the gun. And that's the technology at best is in the beginning stages, and it doesn't exist, and I don't want it. So, yeah.
Well, it exists in Hollywood. That's what it is. It exists in Hollywood and on the editing table.
Yeah.
Are you saying we just need to get Alec Baldwin on the poor guy?
Oh, I think that's the wrong choice.
Poor guy, no, right? That was terrible. I'm sorry. That was horrible.
It can be your gun safety. It can be your gun safety lecture guy when you bring him in as a speaker. He can talk all about gun safety, right? Alec Baldwin.
Right.
Exactly.
Alec Baldwin.
Gun banners step up programming of TV and movie. Well, here's an interesting segue, right? Let's, as long as we brought up Alec Baldwin, we'll just segue right into this, right? Gun banners step up programming of TV and movie audiences with hashtag Show Gun Safety campaign. Oh, boy.
Well, what they want to do is they're pushing, of course, the gun safety thing in cop shows and TV shows and all that, and it's fine. But again, it's showing they'll show that only police officers should have guns, is what they're saying, in a lot of these things. I mean, CBS and ABC have got their full share of Chicago cop shows, and who you watch those shows and you watch them break the laws left and right. And everything else, and then all of a sudden they're the moral society that's going to teach you how to put your guns away safely. That always baffles me.
Hey, how come they don't have that show yet where in the high crime inner city neighborhood they send out social workers instead of police officers because they're defunding the police? Where's that TV show?
Yeah,
we're just going to call that urban survival. Survivor.
Urban Survivor.
Yeah, instead of sending them to islands somewhere where they try to find food, we send them into the inner cities and unarmed and try to talk people.
Exactly. You got Chicago Fire and Chicago Police, Chicago social worker. He takes his clipboard into the hood. Will he come out alive and make the world a better place? Are we going to be better off because finally Chicago might be a little bit better to get rid of the guns, but that's kind of a different thing. But
they got a total count every day.
People that got guns don't get them. Once they go and get arrested, they end up out of jail in no time and back on the streets. Whereas if it was me or you, a legal gun owner, and defending our rights, we'd be looking at jail time and making an example of us, trying to stick us in jail for as long as possible just for protecting ourselves. There's a total difference in Chicago and those major cities, the way they portray the criminals and the way they portray normal people. But they absolutely make examples of law-abiding citizens. And I remember the story about the girl who drove from New York on the bypass of the highway, and it cut into New Jersey. And as she was doing her bypass, and of course she was a legal gun owner in New York, but because she was in New Jersey, it broke the law that she was just on the highway. And they tried to send her away for a long time, and it was just absolutely ridiculous. It's just foolish.
Well, one thing I got to point out with this whole campaign is it does not surprise me that it's coming from the Brady campaign, which now they've rebranded themselves. I think they call themselves Brady United because they used to be Handgun Control Incorporated. They just keep changing their name and changing their narrative. They're pushing this. They're pushing the whole thing that we lose 8 kids a day in the country to this epidemic, and it's because of firearms in the home. It's not true, but they want this portrayed in the shows. Interestingly, CBS is on board with this, who also owns Paramount, and Paramount they're together now. And Paramount, if I remember right, don't they have this little show out there called Yellowstone, where let's just say that they're using guns all the time to portray the things that they are against, supposedly, at the Brady campaign. And then I did pull up the list. I don't recognize most of these jerks because I don't watch a lot of modern shows anymore, but I did notice Ted Danson's on there, Jimmy Kimmel and all of his writers, Mark Ruffalo. We remember him. He flew out here during that little thing called DAPL to raise some hell, and of course was a moron when he was here.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I mean, it does not.
But he didn't stay. He just flew out there.
The same reason I quit listening to the Dave Matthews Band because
messed that up.
Halfway decent musician, but I just can't stomach anymore because of what they did. But that's just me. But I had. I got it. You made me think of that now, and now I lost my other train. Oh, Yellowstone. Okay, here's the irony. I said train of thought, and that's what put it back into my head. You guys are familiar with Yellowstone, right? You guys have seen it.
Oh yeah.
Nope, never seen an episode.
You've never seen it. Okay.
Never watched
I gotta do one slight spoiler then otherwise this isn't gonna mean a thing. But Mike, you'll get it. One thing that they also portray on that show that I would think gun people would freak out about, the train station.
Oh yeah.
The place where they dispose the body. Because there's nobody that lives in that county. There's no seat of government. There's no anybody to bring. Oh yeah, there's a heck of a nice cliff. Heck of a nice cliff for disposal, but yeah. So we're all worried about gun safety, but we're okay with throwing humans off of a cliff. That's okay.
That's not.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, no problem there.
Is that fall in the Clement category or the inclement?
Yeah.
Hey, Clay, Texter wants to know, will Clay ever open up and tell us how he really feels?
Someday. Nice. Love it. Yeah, we should start taking calls maybe during this. We'll have to see. Anyway.
Yeah. Goes to the 701. When's the new stuff hit?
Well, this will actually hit our website and our podcasting on iHeart and every place else, and probably within the next 10, 15 minutes when I get it downloaded. Otherwise, Wednesday night, 6 o'clock p.m. Mountain Time, 7 o'clock Central Time. Catch us at gunsandthe71.com or any of our social platforms that we're on. And, of course, never forget, best iHeart podcast out there, right there on your iHeart platform. You can find us each and every day along with K-Fire.
Not only the best podcast on iHeart, but it's the official show of the train station in Yellowstone.
There we go.
Get the cease and desist from Paramount. You can't claim that. I just did. Hey, guys, thanks. Have a great weekend.
Right.
Stay safe.
Thank
you, man.
Remember, put the gun away and get a clipboard. Can't believe I said that either.